The Jack the Ripper case is one of the most fascinating and widely speculated about unsolved cases of the past 2 centuries. Theories on the topic range from the killer being royalty or a woman, all the way to even naming Lewis Carroll. Yes, the Lewis Carroll who wrote the Alice in Wonderland books. There's even questions about how many murders he or she was actually responsible for. Let's delve into the admittedly messy information surrounding this case. Environment. We begin our journey back in 1888 in a poor area of London known as Whitechapel. The temperament of society had reached a severe low because of years of immigration, which in turn had caused overcrowding and a deterioration in the quality of life. These substandard life conditions, of course, led to increased crime, including prostitution. People were doing anything and everything just to survive, regardless of morality. The victims. There was a very high amount of violence afflicted on women during the 3 years, 1888 to 1891, which is why there is some uncertainty about just how many victims were actually by Jack the Ripper. The 11 cases became known as the Whitechapel murders. However, only 5 were declared as definitely by the same person, Jack the Ripper. The 5 unfortunate women were dubbed the Canonical 5 and were all dispatched in a similar gory modus operandi. Victim 1 was Mary Ann Nichols. She was found at 3:40 a.m., August 31st, 1888 in Bucks Row. One of the 2 cuts on her neck went all the way to her vertebrae. She had also been stabbed between the legs and disemboweled. Annie Chapman was the second woman to perish. Her body was discovered on September 8, 1888 at 6 a.m. She had the same cuts on her neck along with a sliced open abdomen. This time, though, the killer placed part of her stomach on her left shoulder and small intestines on her right shoulder. The organs in her female area were also removed. The deaths of the 3rd and 4th victims occurred on the same day, September 30th, 1888. While victim 4, Catherine Eddowes, had all the gory similarities of victims 1 and 2, victim 3, Elizabeth Stride, only had a single deep slice across her throat that had severed her carotid artery. Witnesses were also unreliable in that some recounted seeing her with a well-dressed man, while others testified she was with a shabbily dressed man. Because of this inconsistency, several people question whether Jack the Ripper actually committed that killing. Others speculate that perhaps the Ripper was interrupted and therefore unable to carry out his plan in full. There were additional curious mutilations on Catherine Eddowes' face: a severed nose, slashed cheek, and quarter to half-inch cuts on her eyelids. In addition to the slashed cheek, she also had the shape of a triangle cut into each cheek, with the apex of the triangle pointing to her eye. Another curious circumstance was that there was graffiti on the wall above a piece of her apron, written in chalk. It said, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." What does this mean? Was it related to the killings? Despite this type of graffiti being common for the time, the police commissioner demanded it be washed off quickly so as not to incite anti-Semitism in already turbulent times. Even though the 2 victims were found in very different conditions, they became known as the double event and both attributed to Jack the Ripper. The final victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was the most gruesome of the 5. The body was found in her residence on November 9, 1888, with the same throat cut and disemboweling, but her face was unrecognizable. Her abdominal organs were placed under her head, and some other gore was placed by her feet. Her heart was missing from the scene altogether. Various ashes were found in the fireplace along with the melted part of a kettle. This led police to believe the killer had plenty of time while doing his work with this victim. The investigation. The first case was investigated by Metropolitan Police Whitechapel, but after the death of Mary Ann Nichols, it was taken over by Scotland Yard, specifically Detective Inspectors Frederick Aberline, Henry Moore, and Walter Andrews. Over the course of the years, police interviewed more than 2,000 people. Of the 2,000, over 300 were more thoroughly investigated, and 80 were actually detained. Primary suspects were butchers, slaughterers, surgeons, and physicians because of the condition of the victims. Fortunately for these suspects, their alibis all held up. There was also some speculation that the killer could be a woman, perhaps a midwife or abortionist, because women in those professions would have knowledge of female anatomy, and would also have had an easy getaway since their clothes from work would be bloodstained. After the third and fourth victims, the police surgeon was asked to assess the surgical knowledge and skill of the killer. This assessment was groundbreaking in the police world in that it was the first of what is now known as a suspect profile. The surgeon deduced that the 5 murders were by the same person, the throats were cut from left to right, the first cut on each victim was on the throat. The woman must have been lying down when killed. The offender did not likely have any scientific or anatomical knowledge, and that the offender must be a man who is mostly solitude in nature, prone to occasional bouts of homicidal and erotic mania. Society's exasperation with lack of police progress led to the creation of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, made up of volunteer citizens in the East End of London. In addition to patrolling the streets, they also petitioned the government to increase the reward, which at the time was £500. The committee even added their own £50 on top to try to help the reward to catch the killer. The letters. During the 2 years of the Whitechapel murders, hundreds of letters were received about the case, supposedly written by the killer. 3 of these letters received particular focus as potentially being legit. Dear Boss. The Dear Boss letter, postmarked 27th of September 1888 and received on the same day by the Central News Agency, was forwarded to Scotland Yard on the 29th of September. It read, Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with it, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for a jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands, curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now, ha ha. The reason this letter was taken seriously is because 3 days after its postmark, The body of Eddowes was found and, just as the letter indicated, a section of the ear was cut off. Saucy Jackie postcard. The Saucy Jackie was the next piece of mail to garner attention. It was postmarked and received October 1st, 1888, and mentioned the double murder of September 30th. It read, "I was not codding, dear old boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow, double event this time. Number 1 squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Had not time to get ears off for police. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper." From Hell letter. The leader of the aforementioned Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, George Lusk, received the third letter of attention on October 16, 1888. The downside is that the handwriting differed from the prior 2 letters, but the letter was accompanied by a box containing part of a kidney. This caused the letter to be linked to the killings because the left kidney of the 4th victim, Catherine Eddowes, had been removed. The piece of kidney was determined to be human and from the left side, but could not be biologically linked any other way. This letter read, "From Hell. Mr. Lusk, sore, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. T'other piece I fried and ate, it was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." Copies of the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jackie postcard were published by Scotland Yard on October 3rd. Their plan was that someone would recognize the handwriting and provide information on the potential identity of the killer. Within a few days, there was speculation that the letters were actually written by journalists to try to improve newspaper circulation. Police later indicated that a specific journalist had written the letter and the postcard. Curiously, in 1931, 2 journalists from the Star allegedly confessed to writing the letters to keep the public interested in the crimes, since it was good for business. Aftermath. Although Jack the Ripper was not the first serial killer, theirs was the first to have such a media phenomenon that reached all over the world. It could be said that the media coverage of the crimes provided a little bit of benefit, and that it showcased the poor living conditions of the East End, and ultimately resulted in the cleanup and demolition of the worst slums. The nature of the killings has led to changes in police procedures and helped improve investigative processes. Often the question is posed, would Jack the Ripper be caught in modern day? It is pretty likely that the advances in technology today, such as CCTV, would result in a swift capture of such a perpetrator. Today the murders are capitalized on, particularly in the East End, where there are Jack the Ripper tours and even a museum. Case files are even being auctioned off to the highest bidder. While some consider this disrespectful to the victims and families, others insist it is an opportunity to learn and further advance law enforcement endeavors. What are your thoughts? Who do you think the Ripper was? Could the killer have been Jill the Ripper? Or royalty? Was it all a huge cover-up to try to eliminate unsavory ladies of the night? Comment below and let us know.